Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at the Islamic Institute of America in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. After my keynote address, he asked me if I had ever heard of Imam Hussain. I said reluctantly and unashamedly, I should say, that no, I've never heard of Imam Hussain. He said to me, well, in our tradition, he is our Martin Luther King Jr. He said, because just as you lift up Dr. King, who stood against oppression and racism here in America, he said Imam Hussain stood against oppression and tyranny many, many years ago. And so because you've never heard of him, he said, you now must go to Karbala and you must learn for yourself about this great holy man, Imam Hussain. That was in January of 2019. Well, guess what? In April of 2019, just 3 months later, my wife and I found ourselves on a plane headed to Karbala, Iraq. And there we were from April the 28th until May the 6th, 2019. And the rest is history. Yes, I could tell you about when I looked and saw the river Euphrates. I could tell you about standing there throughout Iraq. I could tell you about going to Najaf and seeing the largest cemetery in the world, the Muslim cemetery, the Valley of Peace. I could tell you about all of those things. I could tell you about meeting great sheiks and great imams and great ayatollahs. But the thing that stood out the most was when I went to the shrine of Imam Hussain. When I stood there, I felt the very presence of God. I never shall forget when my wife and I stood there on the plaza and I saw thousands of pilgrims standing there, lining up and weeping and wailing, trying to get in to be able to touch that holy tomb. And I did not realize until I walked in exactly the feeling that they had. When I walked in there, I felt the power of God descend upon me. I looked around and I saw people weeping and wailing. When I got close enough to the tomb, they said, if you're not a Muslim, we will not allow you to go in. But I stood there at the doorway and I stood on the doorpost and I put my hand on the door because I said, if I can't go in, I can at least touch this place that houses this holy and this righteous man of God. And so I laid my hands. Oh, help me, somebody. I laid my hands upon the doorpost. And as I laid my hand on the doorpost, something came through my body. And I felt the power of God transcend to me. As I was standing there, tears began to stream down my face. And I felt a special connection with Imam Hussain. My wife on the other side, for the interest for women, she did not get the memo that you're not allowed to go in. And so we went around on the other side looking for my wife, and I found out to my surprise she was inside the tomb, standing there weeping and wailing like everyone else. When she came out, I said, do you not realize you were not supposed to go inside there? That's only reserved for Muslims. She said, I was drawn into the place and I had to go in and I had to feel the presence of God myself. All I can say to you today, my brothers and my sisters, if you've never ever been to Karbala, Iraq, you need to make plans to go now. Because while there in Karbala, I never felt any fear. Before I went, there was a sense of fear as to what to expect in Iraq. Because all I had heard about was Saddam Hussein. All my church members had heard about was all the violence and terror there coming from Iraq. And the terrorists and the people there and all things in terms of Al-Qaeda. And yet when I got there to Karbala, I did not feel any sense of fear. All I felt was brotherhood. All I felt was a sense of godliness. All I felt was a great strong embrace from the Muslim people there in Karbala. They treated my wife and me as if we were dignitaries. They treated us with respect and they embraced us. And so I charge you today, those watching on YouTube, those in this room here in Somerset, New Jersey, make plans now. Go to Karbala. Make your pilgrimage there. And then you can feel exactly what I felt. Then you will experience exactly what I experienced. So what do